meta. I haven't seen too many people with a lot of success with it outside of Tom Ross, but he continually puts up great results with the deck.
Well, he likes to attack.
Yeah, he's very good at attacking.
That's his thing.
This is going to be, and we'll see how good in this round, because he's facing a matchup which I would figure would be pretty difficult for him. Red-green aggro against Naya aggro. I would expect the difficulty here is that Naya probably has better creatures.
Yeah, when you take a look at Taylor's main deck, he's got 4 Dryad Militants, 4 Soldier of the Pantheons, 4 Fleece Main Lions, 4 Voice of Resurgence, 3 Boros Reckoner, a Frontline Medic, and then 4 copies of Gorkland Rampager. His spells, he's got Boros Charm, Selesnya Charm, Brave the Elements, and then 2 copies of War Leader's Helix. So this looks like it's probably going to be a tough matchup, even though Roy is on 6 cards.
Yeah, as we see here, Tom on the play has Fire Drinker Satyr. So what he can do, because he has so many combat tricks in his deck, is like what Tom wants to do is get 1 or 2 creatures down, and then every time Roy taps out to block with a creature, Tom wants to Titan Strength or Gorkland Rampager, or basically play a trick and then push damage through.
Ross going to play a Mutavault. He's going to equip up the old Madcap skills on the Satyr. Going to get in here for 5 points of damage. He's opening himself up a little bit to the Selesnya Charm, which is a 4 of in Roy's deck, but Tom doesn't really know what he's up against just yet. So this might seem like an obvious play, and it's obviously a very nice start here for Tom, but it could cause a little bit of trouble as well.
Yeah, I mean, even if he's playing against red-green monsters, he'd be opening himself up to Mizium Mortars. I mean, I think it's a pretty good calculated play on Tom's part. If Roy doesn't have that removal spell, then this guy's going to deal a huge amount of damage.
The scary thing about Tom's deck, too, is that he could actually kill his opponent right now if he had a card like Titan Strength into Armed Dangerous or something of that nature. I mean, he can deal a lot of damage on this turn, as all Roy did was pay 2, play Sacred Foundry, and then a Fleece Main Line, which can't even block right now.
Right, and we do see there's an Armed Dangerous in Tom's hand. I don't think he has the Titan Strength to go with it, but he does have Burning Tree and Gorkland Rampager.
Yeah, can't cast any of those yet because of the Mutavault being a second land, but all he's going to do is just pump up the Satyr. He'll take 1 and fire in here for 6 points of damage. Taylor's going to go down to 7.
Yeah, and the problem is that Taylor's way of removing creatures is by blocking them, and Tom's hand is pretty hostile toward blocking right now. Yeah. It's going to be, without that kill spell, Roy's going to have a very tough time not taking 7 damage over the next 2 turns.
It looked like Roy did pick up the kill spell he's looking for, though. It looks like he picked up a copy of Selesnya Charm, so that'll do a really nice job, opting not to attack here with the Fleece Main Line, play a little bit of defense maybe against that Mutavault, as Ross does draw a card for the turn. Has to imagine that probably something is up at this point. Selesnya Charm is, I think, the most obvious thing, given that he's playing against a Naya deck, so I can't imagine that he believes that the Fire Drinker Satyr is just going to be good to go here.
Right. Yeah, you know that Naya had the option of tapping out for something. The deck, any deck that plays this mana and Fleece Main Lion has a multitude of 3-drops, whether it's Smiter, Reckoner, Frontline Medic, or just another 2-drop. You'd have to think that Roy has a spell.
And Ross is going to fire in here. Here's the Selesnya Charm. The Exile mode, 5 or greater. Nothing Tom can really do about that, unless he's making a Soldier token, which there might be a chance of that. Huh. He is going to make a Soldier. Wow.
Oh, wow.
And he's going to double block here.
That's not as good.
This could get ugly. Here's your double block. Tom's going to organize the blockers.
Yeah, Roy's going to get punished for that play pretty hard.
Huh?
Well, and it happens right. Yeah, and that seems like a little bit of a misstep on Roy's part. He ended up just giving away his Fleece Main Lion there.
And Tom is just going to play a Burning Tree Emissary and a Gorkland Rampager and just pass the turn back. So there are a couple of different things Tom could have done on that turn, but he just decides, okay, I'll exchange the creatures here. I'll take a bunch of damage, obviously, because it's a Fire Drinker Satyr. So I end up taking 5 to do that, but I'm ahead on the board again. So that's exactly where I think Tom wants to be.
Yeah, so Roy now is going to have to recover. He didn't take any damage last turn, which is good for him, but there are 2 creatures on the board. As we know, Tom has an Armed in his hand, so that could be a 5/5 double striking Gorkland Rampager this next turn.
It's an above average turn.
Well, I mean, it'll be very hard for Roy not to take 7 just this turn.
Looks like Tom picked up another copy of Burning Tree Emissary, which isn't going to do a lot at this point. Also has a Temple in his hand right now, but he is going to cast the Burning Tree Emissary, and now looks like he's going to cast Armed, which is, as you mentioned, +1/+1 and double strike. So we're looking at a 5/5 trampling double striker coming into the red zone here momentarily, along with probably the Burning Tree Emissary and the Mutavault.
Well, yeah, that's 10 points of trample damage, and Roy, with only 2 points of toughness on his board, will take 8 on that attack. So this will be lethal.
This card, I feel, Armed, not so much dangerous, but obviously that card has some applications, but one of the more underplayed cards in Standard. It's definitely powerful. 2 mana for +1/+1 and double strike is really good.
Yeah, it's a powerful effect, absolutely. We've seen it play basically in this deck, and some like Boggle-style strategies have started to play this card as well.
Okay. Try to kill their opponent a little bit faster. As into the red zone we go. Taylor's going to take a look at the board, and I think he's going to realize that he is dead. So Tom Ross is going to win game number 1 here. Red-green aggro getting the job done against Niagros. We're going to move towards the sideboards. I know you've got Roy Taylor's in front of you. What do we see?
Well, what he's going to have to do in this matchup is just have more removal spells. We saw that Celestia Charm there had the potential to get rid of that 2-drop. Tom's deck does go all in on a creature, and Roy's creatures are better. So if Roy can remove Tom's early creature and then stabilize with a card of his own, like Voice of Resurgence, Fleecemane Lion, that should be good enough for him. So he does in his sideboard play 3 Mizium Mortars. I'd have to think he's going to go ahead and board those in. He has 2 Unravel the Aethers. That's not the worst. He did see an enchantment that game, but I still don't think there are enough targets for him to use that. It's mainly just going to be these Mizium Mortars that he can use. There are some cards in the matchup, I think Boros Charm in particular, that's very weak coming from Roy's side, that I'd imagine he would board out.
On the other side here for Ross, you're going to find a couple 1-ofs and 2-ofs, as we've seen before from him. A Ranger's Guile, another copy of Armed Dangerous to go along with the 2 he has in his main deck. A Singleton Burning Earth, 2 Skullcracks. A Forest, a Searing Blood. 2 Mizium Mortars. That Forest is to help with these Domries, I believe.
That was the card that stuck out of me in the sideboard. It's like a Forest.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 21 lands in his deck, so he can board up to a 22nd. He's also got 2 Shocks and an additional copy of Fire Crusader. Tom had a Forest in the sideboard of his deck at the Invitational when he made top 8 too, so that definitely stood out to me. If he wants to play a longer game here with Rampagers and Domries, he can definitely do that, along with activating the 2 Mutavaults in his deck. So he wants to play a shorter game, but if he wants to go a little bit longer with Domries, he has the ability to do that.
Yeah, well, what I think he wants to do is he wants to make blocking more difficult. So cards like Mizium Mortars will probably come in on Tom's side as well. So they're coming in probably on both sides of the board. Tom might need to board in cards like Domri, but one of the cards I actually really like in his board in this matchup is 1 Burning Earth. Roy's deck plays 1 basic land in the entire deck and has no ways to remove a Burning Earth. So if Tom could stick a Burning Earth, that could be very powerful in the matchup.
Well, we'll see how both players do on a sideboard here as we work our way into game number 2. Again, Tom Ross, number 24 on the Star City Games Open Series leaderboard for Season 2. He's trying to work his way up the standings right now, too. Again, with not a lot of the top 16 in attendance, just Joe Lissette. He's got the opportunity to make some moves here and work his way towards the Players' Championship invite. Now, you can expect big things from Tom tomorrow when he's playing Green-Blue Infect. And he's obviously had some success with this deck in Standard. But if you read his article that went up on Friday, he basically said, this deck isn't anything special. It's just a deck that I like to play in this red-green aggro deck. It gives me the opportunity to, work towards his skills. He's really good at playing aggressive decks. And in an 11-round tournament like this, I don't think it's the worst place to be.
No, and I think there's something to be said when you have an 11-round tournament for playing a deck that gives you breaks in between rounds. That can actually be really helpful, especially... Yeah, if you have to play 11 rounds and presumably a top 8 round too, that could be 12 rounds in one day.
Yeah, Tannen Grace making a tweet a little bit earlier today, just saying I played the wrong deck for this tournament because he's playing blue-white with Elixir. So if you're playing the Adrian Sullivan-esque deck where it takes a lot of mental energy, your rounds are never going to end quickly because you can't kill someone very fast, it could be a really draining tournament. That's a very realistic thing. Again, we've got 11 rounds today, and we've got all of our elimination rounds tomorrow. So these players, whoever makes top 8, presumably is going to be playing 11 rounds of Magic. There will be maybe 1 or 2 people who are able to double draw in, but these players, all 778 of them, have a long day in front of them.
Yeah, it's such a big number, especially for the... Yeah, that certainly, I think, breaks the previous record we had in Dallas.
Oh, yeah. This is the biggest tournament we've had in Dallas. It's funny because every time we come here, we always say that. This is the biggest tournament we've had in Dallas. Last time we were here, Shaheen Saroni and I doing coverage, that was the biggest tournament that we had in Dallas. Now this one is the biggest tournament. So everyone from the Austin, Dallas, I know that some players came from Baton Rouge, Thomas Ross among them. They're coming out in droves, man. Even though this format is kind of, I don't want to say stale is the right word, but we're working our way towards the end of it. We got Journey to Nyx in a couple of weeks here. Players still want to do battle. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see the turnout tomorrow for our legacy portion, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, so going with Roy's deck, I want to look over at that for a little bit, too. It's a Naya aggro deck, and when we said aggro, it's really more of the aggro version instead of the mid-range version. He's playing the full Boros Charm, Celestia Charm, Brave the Elements version of the deck, which has put up pretty decent results as of late. I think he has a fair number of dead cards in this matchup, unfortunately. Like, cards like Boros Charm don't seem particularly good here. Even Brave the Elements is only okay.
Yeah, I'm not particularly in love with that card. Those are the cards I'd be reaching for first to sideboard out. The issue here is that he doesn't have a lot of great cards to sideboard in. A card like Skylasher may not seem great on the surface here, but it can just trade with a creature, so I would be happy bringing in a card like that. I think Boros Charm is the first one to go, and then Brave the Elements will be the second one to go, but I think you want to start by removing Boros Charms and then moving forward there. Again, he doesn't have anything that's all that exciting to actually bring in this matchup, which, again, isn't too surprising if you think about it. Not a lot of people do play this red-green aggro deck that Ross is playing. So as a result, you're not going to see a lot of sideboard with cards for this deck, as it looks like Taylor looks a little frustrated with the hand, as he's on a 6-carder.
Yeah, well, it has Boros Reckoner in it, and that's one of the best cards for him in the matchup, so I have to imagine he'll keep it. But yeah, it doesn't have too many tools, it looks like.
And you got Temple Garden tapped, passing the turn back. Rakdos Cackler to start here for Ross.
Yeah, and we do see Mizium Mortars drawn on Roy's side, so his plan of, removing the early drops and then stabilizing with a creature, that's intact right now. He has a Mortars, and he has Reckoner, which is arguably the best creature to stabilize with.
Yep. I think that's the card that gives Tom the most headaches. The thing is that card's just not seeing a lot of play right now. And it looks like Taylor is just going to take 2 and then take care of this Rakdos Cackler with Mortars right away. As Ross is going to untap, he'll take a draw. You see a Lightning Strike over there in Tom's hand. He's going to play a Temple of Abandon. It's okay, he's in a little off-curve action. Does he have a 1-drop to play as he leaves that card on top?
That might be a little hasty on Roy's part to shock to Mizium Mortars there. As, shocking makes you take 2, letting the Cackler swing also makes you take 2. It is mana efficient, but as we see here, it doesn't look like he has a play this turn, but it's possible he wanted to save that Mortars for a stronger creature.
Yeah, there's definitely a chance of that. Ross going to draw a card after the Dry Militant comes into play for Taylor. This is a Fanatic of Xenagos. The Tribute will be placed on the stack here. We'll see what Taylor does decide.
Yeah, Fnatic really has let this deck turn the corner. Remember, Tom was playing this deck before Fanatic of Xenagos was even printed. Fnatic, one of the more powerful creatures in red-green right now, so that has only helped to make this deck better.
Yeah, this card definitely necessary to actually turn this deck up a notch. Does give him something to do on 3 mana. You can work it through with a Burning Tree Emissary type thing. So a lot of things and a lot of positives to this card. You see Taylor's going to decide exactly what he wants to do with the Tribute.
Yeah. I think this is where you'd want the Mortars back. You want to sequence it so that the Cackler trades with the Dryad Militant and the Mortars trades with the Fanatic. Because the Mortars traded with the Cackler, you can't make, this trade doesn't work. You can't actually have Militant trade with Fanatic.
Yeah. An attack here for 2 from the Militant, going to put Ross down to 18. We'll see what Taylor's play is going to be this turn. He can drop down Boros Reckoner. He's actually going to play Stomping Ground on tap, so looks like he's got some other things to do.
Well, I think he wants first strike mana for the Reckoner.
Gotcha. That's exactly what it is. So there is your 3/3 Minotaur with first strike available. And this is the card, as you mentioned, that is a lot of trouble here for Ross, as he's going to have to find a card like Madcap Skills and speak of the devil, and it does appear.
What? Yeah. I was going to say, normally red-green has to 2-for-1 itself to get by that card. I think he'll probably just Madcap and swing here. He has at least 1 Lightning Strike in his hand. I was going to say that he was originally probably on the plan of Lightning Striking the Boros Reckoner and just accepting the 2-for-1, but no longer. This is 6 points of damage, and with 6 more in his hand, Tom has a plan.
Yeah, I think there are 2 Lightning Strikes in the group right now, so that might just be it unless Taylor's able to gain a little bit of life here. And you can see some of the appeal of this deck, where a lot of people are playing non-basic lands, like Temples that slow down their development, or like these Shock lands from Ravnica, which they have to take 2 of, because you think of this game, Matthias, we saw 2 from the Mortars, and we also saw 2 to cast the Reckoner, leave first strike available, so Taylor has dealt 4 damage to himself. Now he's going to come into the red zone here with the Militant and the Reckoner, but that's the appeal, I think, of this hyper-aggressive strategy from Ross. This is not the best deck in the format, not even close, but it gets the job done because of people's mana bases, as now Ross is going to fire off, it looks like a Lightning Strike. And Tom says, I'm going to you.
I'm going to,
yeah. And I think what he's saying is, in response to your voice of resurgence, I'm going to shoot you.
Not targeting the voice. Yeah, I'm shooting you, and then I'm going to shoot you again.
And Tom says, I'm going to shoot you again, and then that is going to do it. So Tom Ross is going to win this match 2-0 over Roy Taylor and his Naya aggro deck. The boss off to a nice start here with red-green aggro.
Tom Ross's deck is a very sharp deck to play against. What I mean by that is your decisions are very important. They're very tactical early on, and if you make the wrong call, it can cost you an entire game. As we saw, I think even little things there, like shocking to Mortars the Cackler on turn 2, just that cost him an extra 2 damage, because because of the hit, or maybe an extra 4 damage because of the hit he had to take off the Fnatic that turn.
Sure.
And that added up with the fact that then he had to shock for land number 4 is enough that he takes exact damage. And that ends up being the whole game.
And also think about when you're testing for this format, right? If you're in the area and you're saying, okay, I'm going to go to Dallas Fort Worth, let's play some games. Let's test at the local store and let's get ready for the tournament. What are you testing against? You're testing against mono black. You're testing against probably mono blue. You're testing against Revelation decks. Maybe black white mid range. Maybe
some monster deck.
Yeah, some monster deck. So you're probably familiar playing against the decks that are very mid-range you're controlling. With this red-green aggro deck, as you mentioned, if you make a misstep with your lands or you're not used to just playing against something that's hyper-aggressive, you can just make what might not seem like a large blunder, play right into their hands with the way that you sequence your lands or the lands that you play untapped, where maybe you're just supposed to play that land tap. Maybe you're not supposed to take Tuna Mortars, that Rakdos Cackler, where Tom knows all of these interactions because he's on one side of it. Chances are you haven't played against a really hyper-aggressive deck very much.
Yeah. So